why do people need empirical evidence to point out something that it should be true on an obvious level?
Oh, well, that's easy because our sin nature tells us the opposite.
People who don't have a renewed mind, are born again, have the Spirit of God in them, are going to attempt to be wise in their own eyes. It reminds me of Andrew Tate, talking about women want love, men want respect. I'm like, bro, that was the best-selling Christian book in 2004.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Did he get that from there? Because I heard him saying that. I was like, maybe he's read that and he's biting it a little bit. It's just interesting the world is just catching up with that.
Slowly catching up with the same ancient truths we've been talking about forever.
Ruslan.
One of the things I think we always talk about that's interesting is the idea that God's ways are actually in your best interest.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because you talk about it, I talk about it, but it's like people still need empirical evidence to prove the obvious.
Yeah.
Right? And this fact about cohabitating has been known for a while. With regards to people who cohabitate, or less cohabitating means live together before marriage. Less likely to get married, and if you do get married, you're more likely to get divorced.
Yeah.
Okay. So now,
which is, by the way, insanely counterintuitive, right?
It is.
Because we would think that if you live with someone before you get married, then your chances of success in marriage would be higher. But all the data on this subject says otherwise.
Exactly. So. And now, apparently, the world is catching up. The Wall Street Journal wrote a story, and it says, "Too risky to wed in your 20s? Not if you avoid cohabitating first."
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
And it shows the picture, and it says, "It's now marriage proposal season, the time between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day. Nearly 40% of couples decide to get engaged." The holiday, I didn't know that. The holidays are the time people, I guess it makes sense. Yeah. The holidays tend to put people in mind of marriage. So what's the best age to put a ring on it? It's a question that weighs especially heavily on educated women who find themselves caught between their career ambitions and pressure to settle down and start a family.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
We did talk about that, and something that they talk about, Jordan Peterson's talked about, is it's not the wage pay gap, it's actually more of a motherhood tax.
Interesting.
So it's not that women make less money for the same exact jobs that men do, it's that women don't do the same jobs.
That's right.
The women don't do the same jobs that men do, and they then have to take time off in their 30s, specifically, if you're a lawyer or whatever, and that ends up pulling you back from earning your full potential if you take 5 years off, 3 years off, 2 years off, 1 year off for a baby. And so women who find themselves caught between their career ambitions and pressure to settle down and start a family, the conventional wisdom is that they should get launched professionally in their 20s and wait until 30s or after they're married. Then they can establish themselves as independent adults before finding and pairing with an equally successful partner. This strategy is supposed to maximize their odds of a lasting bond because the conventional wisdom also holds that early marriage increases the risk for divorce. But they go on to say that if you get married in your 20s, which I actually think is good, in my opinion, because I say, I call it I echo Kevin Samuels, an IKEA marriage. If you go to IKEA, right, you don't just get the nice furniture, you get the meh furniture, but then you get to assemble it and make it look very nice, right?
Yeah, that's a strange way to put it, but yeah.
And so, I had an IKEA marriage. We were broke.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not the person I was today.
Yeah.
And me and my wife built a beautiful life together. There was no need for a prenup. There was no independent wealth. There was no nothing. It was IKEA marriage. And we did not cohabitate before we got married. But what do you think about this idea that now all of a sudden places like the Wall Street Journal are echoing the reality that if you wait until you get married to live together, it's actually in your best interest?
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. And the way I kind of thought about it, like I haven't looked at a lot of the details of the reasons why, or if they even have that in the data, but I thought about it's like when I see people that are dating and they're just kind of living together, it's like you don't have as much of a commitment. You got that 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and that's harder on relationships. Mm-hmm. So like I have a family member who's been with his girlfriend for like 20 years or something, and they're constantly in a bad state, like a bad, really like bad kind of toxic relationship. Mm-hmm. But it makes sense to me too. If you got two people who are kind of halfway in, halfway out, then you're gonna get that because you don't have that kind of dying to yourself and that all in that you're gonna have in a marriage where you have a strong commitment like that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, because you can basically bounce whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
There's no oath. There's no commitment.
There's no security.
And I think even in trying to combat that with like common law marriage, you know what I mean? Like it's still not the same, I feel like.
Yeah. And then that's the thing too, is like when you don't have that security, you're going to be a lot more fragile, a lot more, you know what I mean? And all this. So yeah, so I think that makes sense to me why it would be that way. It's just interesting. The world is just catching up with that.
Slowly catching up with the same ancient truths we've been talking about forever.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Andrew Tate, you know, talking about men want respect and, you know, women want love, men want respect. I'm like, bro, that was a best-selling Christian book in 2004.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Did he get that from there? Because I heard him saying that. I was like, maybe he's read that and he's biting it a little bit.
I would be very surprised if Andrew Tate was sitting around reading Love and Respect.
I would too, actually. Yeah, good point.
But it's still an interesting dilemma that the more we look at the empirical, it's like, why do people need empirical evidence to point out something that it should be true on an obvious level?
Oh, well, that's easy because our sin nature tells us the opposite. So everything that we do, we tend to think we can be happier if we do it our way. We think we always know best. You know what I mean? That's just part of our sin nature. It's like whenever we're sinning too, we're trusting in something else to be fulfilled in or to make us happy, or putting our trust and security in something else. And that's just our natural kind of, our flesh naturally does that. So you really have to renew your mind. You know what I mean? You have your mind renewed so that way you can start thinking more correctly. And then you start realizing, oh yeah, this was good for me all along.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think, unfortunately, people who don't have a renewed mind, are born again, have the Spirit of God in them, are going to attempt to be wise in their own eyes. They're going to attempt to do whatever it is that they feel is right. And that can lead to all kinds of very murky conclusions, which I think leads us to the next topic I wanted to cover. And that is my buddy Zuby, who was on this podcast and made the point that being transracial makes more sense than being transgendered.
Okay. What's his argument? I'm curious.